morning, Anjali, Makarand. This is Murlee Shyam. I'm a member of Global DLC Global HR Committee, and I'm absolutely excited to be part of this panel discussion. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm a HR professional by profession, a sales guy by heart, has been alumnus of MIT Sloan from United States, and lived my journey all through in HR, more practical in business HR. In last 2 decades in various manufacturing, services, technology, real estate, and airports. And that has been my journey in last more than 2 decades. And it's very exciting. And I'm really excited and happy to contribute my knowledge and learning to DLC HR committee members and also the community members outside the committee. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Lovely to have you with us this morning, Mr. Murlee, and look forward to interacting with you on this lovely topic.
Same here. Thank you.
Over to you, Mr. Makarand.
Thank you, Anjali. Thank you, Murlee, and thank you, the DLC team. It's a pleasure for me to be part of the global member of HR committee of DLC and part of Singapore chapter here. My career has been all throughout in HR almost for 30 years. 10 years I spent in India, and 10 years I spent in Australia working there, and 10 years last in Singapore. I largely looked after Asia Pacific, Africa, and Middle East region, and worked for various industries, largely pharmaceutical, healthcare, service, professional industry, and the last one was advertising and media. I take pride in adding value to people's work life, and the HR circle has been teaching, coaching, research, as well as corporate professional roles, hands-on as well as strategic. I started my own business last year, which is K. Macklin's HR Consulting. I do title myself as CHRF because I'm taking deep interest in how we could make HR more futurist and how we could revamp the life cycle in terms of human resources partnering with business from future perspective. And I'm enjoying my journey so far, and I'm so glad to be part of this panel and sharing the knowledge and work with esteemed speaker like Anjali and Murlee. I look forward for a very healthy discussion.
Thanks, Makarand, and lovely to have you with us on this panel today. And I think with your kind of, global experience, we'll get to learn different perspectives, and happy to be a part of this discussion with you. Just a little bit about myself. First of all, I must thank the Della Leadership Club to have organized this panel discussion, which is absolutely very relevant in today's day and times. In fact, it is more relevant today than it has been any other times. And I'm a member of the Global HR DLC Leadership Committee, and really appreciative of what Della has done in this particular space, which had a huge vacuum. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a mindset transformation coach. I've had a 3 decades long journey in the area of HR. So happy to be a part of this fraternity. I have led HR in different organizations, and just to name a few, some multinational corporations like IBM and Bank of America. And my last stint was with ERM till about 2020. And that's the time when I consciously took a decision to say goodbye to the corporate world and get full-time into the space of coaching, which I'm absolutely passionate about. And I would have coached almost about 1,000 people so far. In addition to coaching, I also run a mastermind for career professionals, like people who are heading towards a roadblock in their career and just don't know how to move ahead. So I run a mastermind for those people. I'm an author of a book called Career Misadventures and How to Avoid Them, which is available on Amazon. And in addition to that, I've been also a TEDx speaker. And today, really happy to be on this panel, and would love to learn a lot from the august panelists that we have today. So just to commence the conversation, I think we all have been hearing a lot about a huge reshuffle that's happening and a lot of exodus of talent that's happening. And in that context, I think the topic for today, which is strategy, values, and culture, and how do we connect all of this for the benefit of different organizations, is absolutely valid. we all hear about talent being out there in the market, and recently I was privy to some facts and figures, and I was really startled to see that more than 80% of our workforce is either on Naukri.com or on Monster or on LinkedIn and all of that, and looking for a change. So we would love to initiate this discussion by saying that what role does strategy and values and the culture play in terms of retention of employees? So I would love to hear from perhaps you to start with Murlee. What is your take on that, and what are some of your views as to how HR professionals can add value to this or contribute towards slowing down this exodus of workforce from different organizations? Because I think all of us are aware that, you know, one person out of the doors of the organization costs heavily in terms of the knowledge that has gone out of the organization, and plus in terms of monetary terms, replacing that talent costs a lot and it hits the bottom lines. So what are your some of your views, Mr. Murlee, on this? We'd love to hear from you.
No, great point, Anjali. And this pandemic has changed the way we have been looking at corporates, the way we have been looking at our life and the life of our team members. So there has been a radical shift in the way we have, even in our own outlook of looking at the businesses, number one. Number two, the pandemic compelled us, probably one of the master of the technology transformation. I'll give full credit to this pandemic, because the technology transformation, which could not happen for last 2 decades, happened in just a couple of months in this pandemic. But that has resulted into one very technologically hyper technology and simulated environment where people have performed or tried performing that. That's one. And that has built quite a bit of a stress on the people in terms of their emotional, in terms of their physical well-being. So this work from home or work from anywhere has, in fact, built a lot of pressure on people. One, to adopting a new environment or a new way of working, number one. A schedule which was not a schedule, to be very honest with you. The life used to start anytime and end anytime and restart anytime in the work from home scenario. But people have adopted that environment with a lot of confidence, I must say that. In spite that has resulted into quite a bit of stress on their emotional well-being, besides the physical well-being. That's point one.
So the question arises, Mr. Murlee, that this is a reality for everyone across the globe. Various countries have reacted to this differently, but I think this is a reality that has struck on us. So what is it that some organizations are doing differently from others? Because to my mind, there are some organizations, especially in the context of India, organizations like TCS, organizations like Google, organizations like Infosys, are doing certain things right, because we don't see the kind of exodus that is happening in some other organizations. And to my mind, I think it is the culture that prevails in those organizations, because while on one hand the organizations are struggling to get people back to the office or having even a hybrid culture, whereas in some other organizations, the ones that I've named just a few, they are seamlessly having no difficulty in getting people back to office, so I think they are doing certain things right. And to my mind, having worked in the area of people and culture for a long time, I think they've got their fundamentals right. And somewhere I read that organizations are having to redefine their values. But I think, to my mind, if we have to redefine the values, that means there are no values at all, because values is the bedrock of any organization, to my mind. And values come out of the purpose. So if organizations are having to redefine their values, I think they somewhere lack purpose. And what would be some of your views? I mean, I would just love to hear from Mr. Makarand on this, that what is your take on this?
Thank you, Anjali, and thank you, Murlee, for highlighting the new world of working from home and balancing work life. I personally want to go back to your topic of retention, right? Retention has always been a challenge, and now it is a crisis, is my opinion.
Sure.
It is a crisis because we really don't know what tangible things we have in our control to manage it. If you look at these three buckets, which are very carefully picked up by DLC, is culture, values, and strategy. To my mind, culture is the oxygen in the atmosphere. When you join an organization, if there is a positive oxygen and a good atmosphere, it is easy to breathe, easy to survive, easy to work hard and do. But if it is lower, then you tend to suffocate. And I think most organization cultures, which were probably good, average, and probably bad, are all got into equilibrium because of pandemic. Because there is a reset button which this pandemic has activated. Coming to values, as Anjali rightly said, in a very simple way, it is purpose, right? There is no point re-looking at redefining values. I mean, to my mind, values or what values you have in an organization is not so critical. The most critical is how embedded your values are from your leadership to the employee. I think the focus should be not about what values or defining values, but very much about how do we embed it at this crucial time, because that will really help. And the third piece is strategy. I personally believe strategy is a word which is now linked in a post-pandemic world with confusion, because we had everybody, I mean, with your experience, Murlee and Anjali, we all have worked for 5-year strategy and then 3-year strategy. And then it came to annual strategy, right? Everybody has done that. But today, if you look at the new language of CFO, there is a quarter to quarter strategy, because the focus is on P&L, okay, and not so much about what are we going to achieve. And the cost of the business and the staff cost is adjusted quarter to quarter to meet the margins. Now, how can a human capital, which is a tangible resource, can be adjusted on a quarter to quarter basis and expect magical result for an organization which holds values and culture also? So we are
Absolutely.
in a very challenging situation to my mind. And we all need to put our brains together and see what is practical. Is the quarter to quarter going to be month to month, which is the scary part to my mind? And seeing this confusion, as Anjali pointed out, we see the terminologies like great resignation. Great resignation is not, it's just a effect of the cause of the past. I mean, pandemic is just a catalyst to bring out this outcome. People have been frustrated in organizations for long, and there are people expressing it out loudly. And to my mind, those organizations who did well, they have probably a lesser problem to hold. And this is what my thoughts are about the subject.
Absolutely, absolutely, Makarand, you very well put it in a very immaculate manner. My take on this is that strategy needs culture and culture needs strategy. We HR professionals need to look at strategy and culture not being opposing to each other, but they need to walk parallelly. In order to define a strategy for an organization, and that to a business strategy, what my 2 cents to this would be that strategy needs culture. If the strategy is built on the bedrock of culture, I think it is definitely bound to succeed. Why many strategies fail in organizations, and the best of strategies is because it is not on a bedrock of culture. I remember in one of the organizations that I worked in, it had the best of strategy, but yet, it wasn't implemented well. And the implementation rests with people. And if people are not convinced about the leadership walking the talk, if people are not convinced about leadership practicing the same values that exist on the soft boards of the boardrooms and it comes on the brochures of the organization, then I think there is a loss of trust somewhere. And I think losing trust in an organization's leadership is perhaps the worst thing that can happen. And in that kind of an environment, to my mind, no strategy can work. So I think my point number one is that strategy and culture need to walk hand in hand. And for any culture which is without a strategy is also non-sustainable. So I think we HR professionals in different organizations need to get that right. And another thing is that we lot of times we HR professionals feel that engagement of an employee is by doing birthday parties and those frills kind of a thing within quotes is going to increase engagement. To my mind, that increases only the happiness quotient or the pleasure for a little while, and that doesn't ensure retention at all. So to my mind, retention would be actually caring for an employee. And I've worked for one such organization where people put in discretionary efforts towards work. And I would say discretionary effort would be that when you're not even told to do that. And that is something that proves that you are doing certain things right as far as the culture of the organization is concerned. Just to give you a small example, that I've known of people working on their wedding day to complete a project without having been told to do that. So I think and I've seen in just as recent as about 2 years back, when I worked for this organization, and there were people who stayed on with the organization for over 20 years. And in today's day and age, it's something very rare. So I think culture is something that you need to walk the talk, and you need to really define very carefully what are the acceptable behaviors and what are the non-acceptable behaviors. And it should call out from the top. It should be top down, so that each one of the organization members speak the same language and they follow the same values, to my mind. And that will be an environment, I think perhaps, we won't have to go back and look at the drawing board again as to how to redefine our values. That's how I would look at it.
A great point, Anjali. Let me put some thoughts behind the business. The business will go now from quarter to quarter. It will come down to day, and the entire automation of business processes and even retail, from field to head office to stock to retail to balance, everything has been so well automated that now everyday appraisals are going to happen, and that's the reality of the life. So we'll have to accept it. Number one. Number two, there is a strong correlation, and which Anjali also rightly emphasized, between the strategy and the culture. But culture builds an habitat where a strategy lives or dies. It builds a place where either strategy lives or dies. When a strategy lives, when the cultural values are being embedded rightly, which you both of you reflected that in the way people behave, the way leadership behave. When it does not happen, we say that there is a culture, and there is a culture. Whether the culture is a progressive or a toxicity, either way, there is a culture. Everyone is following a culture. But in a culture, strategy lives. In a culture, strategy dies. Now, point is, we are brilliant in making a strategy. We are brilliant in, I mean, quarterly strategy, monthly strategy, daily strategy, 5 year, 10 year, whatever. 5 year days gone now. Monthly and quarterly is better now. But what happens when we allocate, resources and also the plan in a way which should work for us? Why it doesn't work? Only because we miserably fail in executing those strategy at the ground, right? So the key is the failure of a strategy implementation at the ground by the team. And if you ask why the team did not execute that strategy, there you will find the seeds of good culture or not so good culture, where people are not being engaged, where people are not being appreciated, where people are not being taken care of, whether their physical, mental, well-being, or as simple as their reward strategy, as simple as their career, and this great resignation has been talked a lot about after pandemic. It was earlier also in many industries, it was earlier also. Just that the toxicity of culture in few organizations has triggered those, or a toxicity of manager behavior just triggered those resignations or expedited that. but it was there earlier also. And the way we build the culture, when we transfer the culture from the walls of the boardroom to the behavior of the leader, and they start walking the talk, and it becomes their way of life, that differentiates an organization from an organization where culture is helping a strategy to get executed, or culture is not helping a strategy to get executed. That's something which is interesting. And you look at any anecdote, any example, any organization, those are flourished or not flourished, both had a culture. But where one culture dies, one culture, they lived. Key is execution. Key is engagement. Engagement in the right terms, not the so-called festivity always, but engagement with your vision. People should believe in it. You need to co-create those vision and action and roadmap together so that people buy it. And when people buy it, they accept it. And when they accept it, they live for it and they die for it also. So that's something which we need to create an environment around.
Absolutely. Murli, you brought out some very pertinent points. First of all, the one I really loved was the rewards strategy of the organization has to be really sound, because, there are some organizations who are really kind to people, who have the right culture, they speak the right language, and they live the values, but they are very economical with rewarding the right people with the right compensations, or even recognizing their efforts or the impact that they make to the organization. So in the absence of the right reward and compensation strategies, the culture will fail as well. And the second thing that you said was the leadership walking the talk. I think it's really, really important. And what worries me for the future is, I'm sorry to say, the quality of leadership that we have, because most people do not believe that they can look up to their leaders. I've spoken to a lot of middle management and the new entrants into the jobs that come from the B schools and all of that, and they somehow, and the generation Z that is coming as a workforce now, they are very perceptive, they are very smart, and they expect people, that especially their leaders, to walk the talk. And the moment they get disappointed, I think we have lost one very, very competent generation to a disappointment. And the second thing is that the generation Z does not work today to make both ends meet, because that comfort level has been already provided by their parents and the previous generation. So the moment they feel disappointed, they tend to either leave the workforce or they leave the country also many times, thinking that, we don't have the right kind of leadership. And I think that is something that should worry us, that we need to build very strong leadership who really walks the talk. That is what my take on this is, because no matter how much you define the culture and define the strategies, you may have the best culture on paper, you may have the best strategy on paper, but if the leadership is not really executing it, implementing it, I think that will really disappoint people, and we'll land up into a situation of the great resignations that we are into it now.
Small point that we are not different than the leaders are not different than us. Point is, the HR is leadership and leadership is also HR. And now we cannot hold everything accountable to the only business team. This is our responsibility also to build a culture. This is our responsibility to build an environment, build a platform, build processes, and run organizations systemically with those processes, with values. So the larger accountability again comes towards HR, and the more HR is close to the business, the more they are understanding the business compelling need, the more they are understanding the top line and the bottom line and the balance sheet and the market adversities. It is better for the organization, and that those organizations run more successfully. Give an example all across, either in India, in the United States, or anywhere you look at that. Now, where the HR has worked closely with the business, and when they feel that they are part of the business and HR is not separate, they work better. Where business think that HR is separate, or HR think that we are separate than the business, I strongly feel that we owe that accountability to the business to build a leadership team which should be resilient enough, agile enough to thrive in uncertainty and such challenges than ever before. And we should owe that accountability to the business to build a leadership team which is successful and thriving in the challenges. That's my take. Yes.
No, I think that's a great point. Mr. Makarand, any thoughts from you
Yeah,
on this?
I was listening to you guys, and there's some good nuggets which I picked up. So, Anjali, you pointed it out, walk the talk of leadership, right? So, there is nothing important to my mind in today's world, which is leadership behavior, and how important it is to get the culture, the values, or strategy coming top down. And the second word I picked up from Murlee, which was so valid, was the co creation. Now, did the culture, the strategy of the business was co-created, or is it just kind of a couple of people coming together dominating their thinking in the organization? What I would also link two words to this subject is the vision and the mission. I don't think strategy can be in isolation and have vision and mission which are independent. So to my mind, it's a flow of vision, mission, and strategy, which Anjali also used the word purpose linked to that. And how simple you can make it for people to know. For example, I worked with a company called Novartis, and they had a very simple line called caring and curing. Every employee knew why we are there, what is our role, and what is our objective. So this simplified version of what your vision is, and linking that to strategy will have a positive effect to my mind in terms of culture, in terms of values which are coming out of your vision mission, and then the strategy which is dynamic to the economic changes of every year. There's one more important point I would like to make, which Murlee talks about, is HR business leader, our job to build that environment where the culture can be created. My observation is, and I would love to hear from you also, is the investment in HR is becoming poor and poor, is my opinion. They want a 7-course meal, but they hire a McDonald's cook for that purpose. You see? So the question organization need to think is, do they want a 7-course meal? Then the infrastructure and resources to produce 7-course meal requires investment. You cannot, if you just want a burger, HR can serve you a burger, no problem. It will be a quick fast food. But there has to be an alignment to the investment made into human resources for allowing them to do their jobs. I have seen, and this is average I'm giving you, most organizations in the media, they will say, people are our assets, people are our business. These are very common favorite lines of every CEO in their interview in media. But if you look at the ratio of human resources versus finance function, because it is left brain and right brain of the CEO, it is 1:6 or 1:5. So there are more people to collect money and do reporting of money rather than invested in managing your superior dynamic asset, which is human capital, to manage that. Now, Murlee, as you rightly said, should HR be doing operations, or should HR be doing organization design or diversity inclusiveness, or should do culture? And now the today's new buzzword is sustainability, right? Now, if you are having so many hats, are you giving that much space? Because even HR is a human being and they have 24 hours to work for, right? So are you investing into building that infrastructure, or are you hiring people for operations of HR and expecting them to do the magic? And I think there is a rethinking required at the CEO level, that they are more comfortable with HR having a go-do relationship rather than having a relationship which is about thinking tank, investing into senior human resource professionals which are more capable of managing the futuristic organization for the company. Now, there has to be a balance between how it is perceived in terms of contribution, cost, as well as output. I mean, I personally believe there is no clarity about alignment versus what is expected out of HR, what kind of HR resources are hired today, and what is the output they are expecting from them, the infrastructure provided to them. I'll be very keen to hear in your world how you see these points.
I think it's a very pertinent point that you made, and I'd like to add two or three different perspectives to it. So one perspective is that yes, HR has to be seen as a very, very important function in the organization. And you're right that HR is seen by most CEOs as somebody who's a firefighter or just a go and quick fix and things like that. So for that, we need to do some tangible actions which portray that HR is looked at very differently. And first, I think, first of all, we need to stop looking at HR as a cost center. We should not have a month to month or a quarter to quarter strategy, but we should look at HR as a revenue generator, to simply put it. So that is where it puts HR on par with other functions of the organization. That's one. And second thing is, and this is of course is my wish list, that HR should not be called as HR, which is human resources, because human beings are not resources. You cannot deal with human beings as if they are resources. Resources could be finance, it could be infrastructure, it could be anything else, or technology. But I think human beings are not resources. So we need to stop calling HR function as HR. That's my wish list. You can call it people and culture. And the third thing is that, which is very important, is the investment in training the leadership. So what has happened in the past few years, about 15 to 20 years, is that worldwide businesses have grown exponentially because of the different market forces or the environment forces. So there was really a need for people leaders. But then, did we really train them to be good people leaders? Did we train them to have a different mindset? Because, no matter how much you train them or teach them or preach them, what comes from within, from being self-aware, what comes from within, from being reflective about yourself. But let me ask a question that, how many of us feel that our people managers or our leaders are truly reflective about their own behaviors, instead of pointing a finger at, that you did not do this, you did not do this. And secondly, I remember when I started my career, there used to be leaders of a stature that, if you succeed, it's your success. But if the team fails, I take the ownership as the leader of the team. But how many of such leaders are there of that stature? So that is how we learned, by emulating our leaders, by treating our leaders as being role models. But do we have such leaders today? So I think these are some of the things that we need to step back and ask ourselves, if we really want to build the culture that people feel proud about.
Yeah, very good point, Anjali. I think you touched the chord of the problem, I would say. The leadership, and their behavior and their ability to own the responsibility of success and failure is a big question mark. And one of the reasons which I have witnessed is many people get promoted because of skill set or the competencies, technical competencies they hold. Their ability to become a rainmaker is a fast track career. What are the leadership traits? What they need to be different? What is general management beyond the technical competencies which they have? And there were investment. People progressed a bit slowly, to my mind, taking those skills. But in today's world, if you are a rainmaker or you have a client who loves you and you can bring business, you get fast track promoted without understanding whether have you learned the ladders of the ropes of becoming who you are. And when you have these missing pieces, you already have created a problem where you have the most senior person who is technically competent, maybe financially savvy and understand the business, but lacks complete general management skills. And this is one of the biggest failure of why organization is unable to sustain a good culture, because the walk the talk gaps are visible during that time. Their success is their track record. So anybody which adds value to their success are welcomed. but those who are questioning or are experimenting, they become a problem in today's world. So the question lies, are we going to change this model? Can we take a pause? And especially in today's VC culture, I mean, India is also not away from this startup culture now. And there's this venture capitalist thing. I don't know how many people have, interacted or met. I mean, I had opportunity to be in the room with some of the boards of 2 or 3 venture capitalists at the same time. And if you look at the way they are talking, there is no long term, there is no organization, there is no culture, there is no, it is money in percentage ROI. And sometimes I feel what is happening outside that room was so different communication versus what was happening in the room. It's extremely short-term mindset. They are not interested in what long-term strategy means, what leadership behavior means, what diversity inclusion means, what is happening with retention, and what they are interested in. Okay, I have put this money, what is my ROI? Then the pressure goes from CEO to the leadership team, from leadership team get cascaded down the line. So the question is, can the organizations take a pause, think whether are we going to be a capitalist driven organization, or are we going to be a socialist organization? For example, like the Tatas, in the past, or some of those large corporations in India who build infrastructure around them. Unilever is also good. Hindustan Lever especially is a good example of the infrastructure they built on Gulita and the training, etc. Can we do that, or can we have a hybrid organization of capitalist come socialist model, which is something to think about? Or are we going to burn ourselves into a ROI model? It is like stock market, where you put money today, tomorrow how much is your return? And then that's going to be the scary part of how human sustainability in terms of leadership, energy, engagement, what will happen to these words, which again link to culture.
Absolutely. So I think it's a very pertinent point once again that, it's human beings who are responsible for creating, sustaining, and building the culture.
Correct.
So I think we need to step back and understand, how quickly are we promoting the people, whether they are truly deserving or not to be in the leadership positions. And are we taking a short-term view or a long-term view? So it's important now that you said very clearly that, it's the buzzword is sustainability. But are we able to create sustainable organizations or not? So it is something like, organizations can move from a state of good to great. But how do great organizations become great? Every organization's dream is to become a great organization, but not everybody becomes a Tata or an Infosys. So I think we need to step back a little bit. And another perspective that I would like to add is that HR is not the only custodian of bringing about a change in the mindsets of people. HR is the conscience keeper of the organization. HR can facilitate, HR can guide, but HR needs to be empowered by the CEOs to take decisions and to implement strategies and to be able to build leadership pipeline over a period of time. And as you said, some of you said that, HR does not have the empowerment to drive the business the way they would like it to be. So I think that's another thing that we need to fix. So what would you like to say, Murlee, about this?
So let me give you a bit of contrary thought process around, and I'll pick up your word that good company becomes a great company. I'll give you some example of few great company, great and why they perished. It's a classic case of one has to study why those great company got finished. Nokia was very successful in front of us in early 20s, and they finished very soon. Why those great so-called great company failed? Even today's startup in Asia, what they are doing right, what they are not doing right. One is a very strong same doing gap, right? You remember for Kodak, before they declared bankruptcy, just 2 years before, their vision statement was to be the world's most efficient digital photographic company. Now, they had a vision to be a strong digital photographic company. But what they did, they kept pushing their paper rolls, photo paper rolls in the market, rather than investing on the research and development on digital photography, right? So there was a clear saying doing that. Just because the revenue was flowing from the paper rolls, they kept pushing that. And in spite of their vision of becoming the best digital photography company, they did not invest on that. So people are very sensitive now. And I'll just come on drawing a parallel to the startup world in Asia. Very recently, a Lenskart company CEO said that now we have grown up to a level after so much of funding. Now to go to the next level, I'm going to take the role of HR. And he becomes CHRO. He took up the role of CHRO to take the organization to the next level of success. So it's not that the startups are not realizing the value of a good people culture and building a strong foundation of culture which nurtures the strategy to grow and live and build an organization of perpetuity. So things are a bit changing, people are departing from the earlier mindset to a new mindset, to a new way of thinking. People have started giving value to HR in their growth strategy, in their growth journey. So that's something which I'm experiencing personally while talking to various venture capitalists. They see when evaluating an organization, they see what kind of organization you have built, what kind of leadership team you have hired, what kind of capability you have brought on table before they think of investing mid to long term in your enterprise. And they're very sensitive and they really mean it. So those are a few changes very clearly evident in the startup space, in VC strategies, to look at that right now.
Just to give a point here, again, it builds down to the leadership. Because if the leadership had focused on the right things at the right time, because there always needs to be a balancing act in terms of people strategy, in terms of business strategy, in terms of innovation, in terms of the market environment that we operate in. Like Kodak, you gave the example of. If Kodak was sensitive enough to the market and the digitization of the space of business that they were in, perhaps they would have been the market leaders still today. So I think the CEO's job is very important in today's environment. I often look at the organization structure, the pyramid, the way it looks at. The higher you grow, the lesser is the space for you to keep your feet and still stand erect. So right on top, I always feel the CEO has space only to keep one foot on the ground, and the other foot is always, and he still has to balance it out there. That was the analogy that I always draw in my mind. And another thing is that the CEO on top is a lonely person. He has to, and he's also visible to the entire organization. Entire organization is looking up to him, and standing on one foot, he needs to be a role model and he needs to take the right decisions. So the question comes back to my mind that do we have the right kind of leadership abilities, the right kind of leadership competencies, people who are willing to stand on one foot and yet take the mantle of the entire organization within themselves, and to do the right balancing act in the interest of the people, in the interest of the business, in the interest of putting the organization together, keeping all the stakeholders happy.
Yes.
So I think again, it boils down to that we can have the right strategy, the right culture, and the right values. But if we don't have the right executors, somebody who's taking the people together and taking all of the three elements together, I think it can all fail, to my mind.
My suggestion is to make leadership, desire of from the leadership is to make it a little simpler. Look at how the leadership starts seeing possibility in every adversity. Make a very agile and a lean organization, still nimble, without having burden of so many hierarchy and a huge accountability on their head. But let's be very simple. Look at futuristic roadmap. Look at possibility and build business sense. I'm sure people would love it, and I'm sure people have started loving it. The organizations are following a distributed and a possibility leadership approach. So that's something which is coming up very fast, and that's something which eases out the pressure of the building kind of leadership. One should do like this. I think little relaxed environment is coming up to my senses.
I think that's a great point. We need to ease out the burden of leadership, Having said that, a lot of training programs, a lot of prescriptions, a lot of teachings to the leadership talks about what behaviors are expected of them. But to my mind, nobody tells them how are they supposed to do it. For example,
Mhm.
it's very easy to tell a CEO that you need to do a balancing act, but then is there a solution for him or her? And another thing is, to my mind, no amount of preachings, prescriptive behaviors, or no amount of teachings will change the behavior or the mindset till the time we emphasize on the process of self-learning or the self-awareness. The moment, to my mind, I think my dream organization would be where everybody is self-reflective and everybody takes ownership of the little area of work that he or she is responsible for. For example, a middle level executive does not blame the manager for him not getting promoted and thinking within himself that why is it that my next door person sitting next to me got promoted, and what is it that I need to do differently tomorrow to be able to get promoted. Similarly, everybody thinks in the same manner that what is my ownership? And I think that can come only through perhaps, reflection and discovering for themselves as to what they need to do. Because, if somebody tells me that, hey, listen, you need to do this, the person will say, go take a walk. You don't know what my circumstances are. Why should I do what you're telling me to do? So help people discover what they have to do. And the moment they start discovering or co-creating stuff for themselves, I think they will take ownership, to my mind.
Just to add on that, I mean, so valid point both of you made. I'm really impressed to hear. Uh, Pandemic showed another side of leadership, is my opinion. In pandemic, many global regional leaders felt out of control, lack of control, and their personal security and their management style came from having control. Now they didn't have lack of control, and we saw insecure leaders. And there is nothing worse than having a leader who is feeling insecure. They created a lot of meetings. They created too many communications. There were too many reportings. I think in pandemic, non-productive work increased a lot, just to ensure that people are stay in control. Self-awareness is a very key aspect to that. And second aspect I'll add to that is introspection. Leaders need to introspect. They need to take the space, the time of step back and do continuous introspection. A self-aware person who introspects regularly, having a purpose, can derive a much better organization for future, is my opinion. And the topic which we are working on is connecting values, culture, and strategy. If we are really, if any leader who is the ingrained, responsible person to bring these three together, they will really create magic for future. In magic in business world, magic in the community, as well as magic in people's life. So let's hope for the best and continue doing our great work in the community. I think if every person takes their work as their purpose and mission, then collectively we all can add a better working life for every human being.
Absolutely. I think you've summed it up so beautifully. So, to my mind, I think whether it's culture, its values, or its strategy, all of it, rests with the implementation and rests in the hands of the leaders that we have. And as you said, that leaders are very insecure. And why do we have insecure leaders? Because we have promoted them as leaders and we've put them into a position much before they were ready for it. They were ready to take on that position. I think that was a great point that was brought about from this discussion. And thank you very much for adding to your points. And I think I am going back much more learned and much more conscious of things around myself. And thank you very much for being a part of this discussion. And I feel really privileged to be a part of this discussion and talking to such august HR fraternity members. Thank you so much. So I think
Even
that's
our
another.
TLC HR committee, we have so much expertise sitting on for example, I can help organizations redesigning, making an optimized organization, saving quite a bit in the bottom line and refining the processes So we are all there
Absolutely.
collectively. You, Anjali, Makarand, we have done some experience and we can support DLC community, the HR team members, and various startup businesses in building their organization, scaling up their organization, strengthening their basics, and building a futuristic organization and building high profitability in the organization.
Great. Makarand, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your service offerings?
So my organization, K. Macklins Consulting, is specializing in helping do human capital audits. And we also do talent management processing so that we identify where the money and the mouth is in terms of investment. Second piece is that we look at all your HR processes and we revamp it, help it into more futuristic direction rather than having the traditional, frameworks which may be in usage right now. The third piece we do is in mental health and well-being. We have identified certain workshops which are experiential learning based, and they help fight fatigue, anxiety, stress levels in an organization, replenishing their energy, especially for the post-pandemic world. Thank you.
So I'll just talk a little bit about what I do. I'm a mindset transformation coach, and I firmly believe over the years that nothing can bring about a change in a human being or an organization unless and until the mindset changes, because it all emerges from the mindset. So I work with people and I work with organizations to bring about the desired mindset change through a program that I have designed, which is a very process-driven program, which is called Invincible Me. And that's an 8-week program that I offer to different individuals and to corporates. I also run a mastermind, which is called Invincible Me Mastermind, which is a group of people that come from different corporates. And in corporates, as you would all be aware, that people feel very lonely and they cannot find anybody to share or to be their sounding board. So this is a group of people which work together to find solutions for each other, to support each other, and to walk them together so that they all become successful. And this group of people meets once a week, and we work very beautifully without being judgmental or without stereotyping anyone, to help them grow and huddle together. So that's another service offering that I have for people. And the third thing is that I work with people, with students, to help them become corporate ready. The MBA students and the other walks of life that come from, and they're getting into the corporates for the first time. So I work with them to get corporate ready. So these are the 3 service offerings that I have. And I would love to work with people who would want to be successful in their life. Thank you so much. And once again, thanks a lot to the DLC HR committee for organizing this event. And I've loved every bit of this conversation. And thank you to the panelists for being there with me. And look forward to greater interactions in the future. Thanks, DLC, once again.
Thank you, Makarand. Thank you, Anjali. It was wonderful to meet all
Thank
of
you.
and
Thank
learn
you.
from you rather, and become a little more wiser to contribute to the community of DLC, and looking forward many more.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.